Eagles-Bengals is a narrative-changing, big-time matchup for the Birds. We'll get into why coming up next on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our code, which is in all lower cases, Locked On NFL, to win $50 instantly. All you got to do is play $5. I'm Louie DiBiase, getting you ready for Eagles-Bengals this Sunday. It is now a 1 o'clock kickoff as opposed to a 4:25. The game was flexed out. This is 2 weeks in a row. The Eagles have been flexed out of their matchup. Actually, the second time in 3 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. The Jaguars game was flexed, so it's going to be next week. The past two games have not been flexed out. But overall, still a giant matchup, whether the NFL thinks so or not, between Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, two of the best, if not the two best wide receiver duos in the NFL. DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown versus T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Two of the teams that have come the closest to beating Patrick Mahomes in an AFC championship, in a Super Bowl. Burrow did it, almost got a ring in 2021. Hurts almost pulled off the ring in 2022. And both this year trying to still find out who they are and trying to reclaim that magic that they had in 2021, in 2022. The Bengals both years, because Cincinnati nearly beat Mahomes in the AFC championship in 22. I thought the Eagles were going to end up playing Burrow and Chase in Super Bowl 57. This year, again, you can still see the star power is there, but both teams are dealing with like future big-time questions. They're wondering if this window is going to stay open. For the Bengals, it's the long-term futures of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like, will Mike Brown pay Higgins? Does this team, will this core stay together? The Eagles don't have that problem. They have paid DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown. They have paid pretty much their entire young core on offense, and they've drafted their entire defense. It feels like they're all under, for the most part, the majority of them are on cost-controlled contracts, but the Eagles have some long-term questions about their head coach, about maybe their quarterback, at least more than the Bengals do with Joe Burrow, who has not been the problem considering they're 3-4. Burrow still has not been the issue whatsoever. They could very easily be 4-3, 5-2 if two plays went right against the Ravens and the Chiefs. The Eagles could also say that with Saquon Barkley's drop against Atlanta. So again, both teams good, but they haven't been able to capture that greatness of the last few years. And this is really like a litmus test matchup. Is that the right way to say it? Litmus? Yeah, litmus test, I believe, is the correct pronunciation of that. I should say more plainly put, it's a narrative-altering game for both the Eagles and the Bengals, because if the Bengals lose, they've both won 2 straight, right? And they've both beaten the Giants and the Browns to kind of put their season back on track. But everybody's wondering, okay, both these teams have won 2 straight. They've both been very good the last few years. They still have all that talent. Are they for real? Or was it just that they played bad football teams? And that's why this game is narrative changing for both. Because if the Eagles go into Cincinnati, which they never win there. Have they ever won in Cincinnati? I'd have to look that up, but I don't believe they have. It's been a long time since they've beaten the Bengals in general. They've actually tied them twice in the last 15 years, which is ridiculous. I don't even want to think about the 2020 game. That was the end, in my opinion, mentally, of the Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz era, when Doug decided to punt it and basically accept the tie. Mr. Aggressive completely lost his edge, and it just looked like he had lost faith in his football team. And that's kind of what happened, and they tied that game. But again, the Eagles rarely win in Cincinnati. If they don't lose, they tie. So can you go into Cincy, beat a team that, while they're 3-4, again, have one of the best quarterbacks and wide receiver duos in football, have won 2 straight, nearly beat the 2 best teams in football in the Chiefs and the Ravens. So they still have that ability in them. Can you do that? Can Jalen Hurts go in and change the narrative? Can he go in and outduel Burrow and show that, hey, I'm still, despite all the questions that, believe it or not, people that are going after me on Twitter and on YouTube, I'm not the only one questioning who Jalen Hurts is right now. Can he go in and show that he's still on that tier with the Burrows and the Lamars and the Allens of the world, and he's not with the Brock Purdy's and Dak Prescott's, Kyler Murray's, Justin Herbert's, the good but not great players? Like, can he outduel Joe Burrow? Does he have to? I wonder if the Eagles will even make that something that they are trying to find out. Or are they going to really feature Saquon Barkley in this rushing attack, kind of like they did last week, and go very 2021-esque? It'll be interesting to see what they do, but they're going to have to throw the football, I think, in my opinion, to win this game, because I think the Bengals will put up points, even with how hot the Eagles defense is. So it's a narrative-changing game for Jalen Hurts. Like, if he goes in and outduels Burrow and looks better than Joe and doesn't turn the ball over, and he doesn't throw for 114 yards and they win, that's going to make people, including me, feel a lot better about QB1. Because the last two games, like, I know you guys don't want to hear it, but Jalen's been a game manager, and that's how the Eagles have felt like they need to win football games, more so than their money. They want to be a pass-first team. The money says that. They've invested in top 10 contracts in pretty much everybody that has to do with the passing game. They brought in Kellen Moore, who's a very pass-first play caller. They paid Jalen Hurts over $200 million. Like, they want to be who they were in 2022, which is pass to get the lead and then run to keep it. But they kind of had to run the whole time to get the lead and to keep it. So can they get back to the identity they want? Can Jalen Hurts, show that confidence, or do they have to be a run-first football team to win this game? So that's part of this narrative. And also just in general, like, the team is 4-2. 4-3 versus 5-2 will feel a lot different, because, again, if you win this game, you've now won 3 straight, which you haven't done since early last year. You have now beaten 2 really good teams, in my opinion. I think the Bengals, even at 3-4, are a really good football team, and 2 great quarterbacks in the Bengals and Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. So you would have like 2 really good wins already in 2024. So there's that part of this equation. And then overall, like, 5-2 looks a whole lot better in these standings that have a lot of good football teams in the NFC conference. Like, 5-2 versus 4-3 is huge, because right now you're 4-2, and you're on, if you look at the early playoff picture, you're on the outside looking in. All 4 teams in the NFC North are currently in the postseason. The Washington Commanders won again last week. They're 5-2. Jaden Daniels should be back this week. So you got to keep up in your own division. So not only is it narrative changing, where you feel a whole lot better at 5-2, beating 2 good teams, 2 great quarterbacks, 3-game win streak, kind of settles the thoughts about, it was just Cleveland versus New York. But if you lose, and let's say it's not a close shootout where there could be a loss in this game and you still feel kind of good about where the Eagles are, but let's say it's not close and there are turnovers again and Jalen looks inferior to Burrow, 4-3, you're still a game over 500, but you'll be like, they only beat the Giants and the Browns, and here we go, like, they played a good team again, and all the same problems have come back up. So for all those reasons, like, this is a really, really big matchup. And again, it's in a place that they just normally do not play well, and it's against a football team that has a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Like, that matchup between Fred Johnson and Trey Hendrickson, I got news for you. Kellen Moore can't have the same plan that he did against Brian Burns, where he put Fred on an island. I mean, you got to have, and Jeff Stoutland too. Like, you can't give Stoutland all the credit and none of the blame for what he does. Like, you got to get tight ends and running backs over there to chip on Hendrickson, who already has 7 sacks this year. Hendrickson, to me, is the most underrated pass rusher in football. Like, you got to make sure that he's kept in check. So big time test for Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, and this entire Eagles football team against the Bengals. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, though. Coming up next, it's time for LOE 3, presented by FanDuel. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with just as little as 4 correct picks. So let's say you want the over on A.J. Brown at, let's say, 83.5 receiving yards this week. He's been red hot in all 3 games he's played this year. Let's say you want Saquon Barkley. You say he's going to be still featured in this Eagles offense. Take him to have more than 75.5 rushing yards. Sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. And guys, today's show is also sponsored by ZBiotics pre-alcohol drink. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by ZBiotics. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, believe it or not. This is news to me. I went my whole life thinking I need to drink water in these situations. That's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have a pre-alcohol drink before I go out with the boys or the girlfriend, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can definitely plan on that next morning being able to do my hike or my walk or getting my run in at the gym. I'm a big morning routine guy, but I also like to go out on the weekends. Like, I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. And sometimes I get frustrated when I wake up that next morning not feeling great and I can't get that routine started. It really kind of ruins my day. And I was always wondering how to kind of merge both things, how to marry the two sides, the devil on your shoulder and the angel. Well, that's ZBiotics pre-alcohol beverage. Here's how to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. Step 2, then drink responsibly. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use our code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Louie DiBiase riding solo, getting you ready for Eagles-Bengals. It's now a 1 o'clock matchup for the Birds. And this is going to be a good one. Again, this is it's again, not a make or break game for the season, but at the same time, again, 5-2 versus 4-3 with this scenario will feel a lot different. And again, you got to contextualize how they win this game, how they lose. But I really want to see Jalen Hurts go in there, have his first fully convincing performance of the year where he doesn't turn, and this is not a lot to ask. I know some people are moving the goalpost up for this guy. I want to see, and I'm not paying him, but the Eagles, let's say, are paying him over $200 million to expect these kind of games. Maybe not every game like 2022, but sometimes you should expect that a couple times a year where he has a fully dominant performance. I want to see him for 4 quarters, take care of the football, be aggressive, make splash plays, and don't miss plays because of vision issues, because of, you're not feeling pressure right, and you're missing things pre-snap. I want to see a full 4-quarter MVP-like performance against Joe Burrow. That's, to me, not too much to ask for. I want to see that like I saw it last year against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. I want to see it like I did in 2022 against Pat Mahomes. Like, that's the guy I want to see this week to make me feel like the Eagles are still going in the right direction at quarterback, to make me feel like, no, they don't have to be the 2021 offense that is featuring their running back and their run game to feel confident that they can win football games week after week. Like, I don't want this football team to feel like that is their best way to win moving forward. Because while, sure, with how much talent this has, that can win you a lot of ball games. That can get you in the playoffs like it did in 2021. But and Gino doesn't agree with me, and you guys heard that on the debate show the other day. I don't believe that can win you a championship, even in this weird 2024 season. I still think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to quarterback play. It's going to come down to throwing the football. And the Eagles want to be a passing team. Nick Sirianni, that's why he won't fully commit to saying, yeah, we need to run the ball to win games. He said each week we go based on what it takes to win. And again, the Eagles, luckily, they've built themselves to hopefully be able to do both, but they want to pass first. And I think they need to pass first eventually this year to win a game. And I think to win a championship. And I think they're going to have to probably pass first in this game against Cincinnati to win. So I don't think it's a lot to ask Jalen Hurts to say, and Jalen's had some really great moments this year. And you guys have heard me on the show say that. Some people are spinning it in the way that I'm just back to 2021 where I've never liked Hurts. I've always been out just waiting for my moment. And here it is. Even this year, if you go back and listen to the first 4 weeks of shows, I was always saying yeah, the turnovers are a problem, but hey, he looks so much better against the blitz this year. He is recognizing things pre-snap. I love the audibles and the different checks that he's been making at the line. He's been clutch. You look at the fourth quarter against the Packers, against the Falcons, against the Saints, against the Browns. There's a lot of good from Jalen Hurts this year, but there's also been just too much inconsistencies that kind of bring back some of those old doubts you had about Hurts long-term when it comes to his pocket presence, his vision, his ability to throw the football over the middle of the field, the turnovers. And he fixed the turnovers, but now, now the middle of the field is a problem. And just overall, he's missing open receivers, and his accuracy's been hit or miss. And the mobility has regressed a little bit. So it's just, again, it's too wavy, up and down with Jalen. I understand the real world that is the NFL. And I know year in and year out, you're not going to get Jalen or any quarterback to play. Even Pat Mahomes doesn't consistently play 2018 Mahomes that threw for 50 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson has won 2 MVPs, but in between those 2 MVPs, he had good, not great years. I'm not expecting every game, every year to be Jalen Hurts Super Bowl 57, but I would expect every single year you get some of those performances, especially in the games where it matters most. And this is one of those moments against Cincinnati where I'm demanding it. This week, I'm not satisfied unless I see that from Jalen Hurts. Some games this year, that's fine. The Saints game, I understood the situation with all the injuries. Just get into New Orleans, get a win, especially after that loss against the Falcons. That team, for their psyche, just needed a win. In that context, I understand. I'll just take what I got from Hurts, and I liked the clutch performance at the end. This game, everybody, including me, is saying the new identity of this team needs to be to run the football. A lot of that is because I've personally been losing faith in Jalen being a consistent passer. I need him to settle that doubt on Sunday. We'll see if he actually does it. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, though. Let's get into LOE3 presented by FanDuel. First, let's take a look at the lines on FanDuel for Eagles-Bengals. The Eagles head into this game as a 2.5-point underdog. The spread is -2.5 for Cincinnati. The over-under is at 47.5. I don't know. I want to say I'm going to pick the Eagles to cover. And I'll probably take the over on that 47.5. But with these kind of matchups, even if the Eagles, if this was 2022 and they were that good, I'm never fully 100% confident in saying absolutely they're going to cover, absolutely Eagles money line against a good football team. But I'm confident. I do think the Eagles are going to shock the world on Sunday. Maybe not shock the world. Maybe that's too aggressive, but I think they're going to pull off the upset, if you will, based on the spread at least. And I think they're going to cover that 2.5. I think they're going to win this game, and I think there's going to be points scored. I think I'll take the over on that 47.5. So here are the 3 bets that I am taking for this game when it comes to player props. Again, LOE3 always presented by FanDuel. I'm going to take anytime. I have 2 DeVonta Smith bets. And my logic behind this is because Nick Sirianni is very conscious. One thing Nick does really well is he understands the star power he has on offense. And he understands that the offense needs to run through these guys. He always says, when he used to talk about Quez Watkins' role, he'd be like, Quez understands this offense runs through A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, right? But he's also talked about in the past, there's some games where it's just going to be the A.J. Brown show because he's cooking, and he's not like Doug Peterson where it's a spread the ball around kind of mentality. It's no, if our best, we've got to get the ball to our best players, and if one guy's cooking, let's get him the football. It was A.J. Brown 2 weeks ago, or it was Saquon Barkley last week. It was Dallas Goedert against New Orleans. But he's also very good at understanding that these guys do, even if they're humble and good teammates, and, they're not going to throw up a TO kind of scene if they're not getting the ball, or Stephon Diggs. Like, A.J. Brown's not going to do that. DeVonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon, they're not going to do that if they're not getting the ball. But Sirianni's aware that they still need the ball. Like, these guys have, even if it's internal, they have egos. They need their confidence to be built up. They need to feel like they're involved. These guys that are great demand greatness out of themselves. They want to be a part of it. They want the ball. That's just a receiver, a star playmaker mentality. And because DeVonta wasn't very involved last week, Nick Sirianni's good at the following week, if a guy's not that involved, of getting him the football. You look at 2022, week 1, DeVonta doesn't catch a single pass against Detroit. Against Minnesota, he's got, 7 catches in 2.5 quarters and was heavily featured. They made sure to get him the football. A.J. Brown, not that involved against the Minnesota Vikings last year, week 2. What happens the next few weeks? A.J. Brown goes on a historic run of 100-plus yard receiving games. So Nick is very good at saying, like, let's make sure everybody eats, everybody's confidence is up. Like, he's very good at understanding that. And DeVonta only had 1 catch last week for -2, -2 yards. So I'm going to go in on DeVonta and say he's not only going to score an anytime touchdown, which is at +250, +210. He's also going to have over 4.5 receptions, which is the line right now from FanDuel. And I'm hammering that over. That's at -122. So my first 2 bets for DeVonta Smith, anytime touchdown at +210, over 4.5 receptions at -122. Maybe you even want to make that a parlay. I'm going to take them individually, but I think DeVonta Smith's going to be involved a lot against the Bengals. And again, he's a way to fix the middle of the field, like the lack of a presence over the middle. Get DeVonta Smith in the slot, those choice routes over the middle. Like, use him as a possession receiver. Use him the way that Kellen Moore used him early in the season, the way he used Keenan Allen in LA, the way he used CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. Put him in the slot, get him over the middle, let him cook with Jalen Hurts. I think that's the mentality. It can get DeVonta's confidence up, not that it's down, but it can get him back involved after an off week. And I think as well, it can help you solve this problem that is you just don't exist in the middle of the field, which, again, long-term is unacceptable. You have to be able to throw the football over the middle. So those are my 2 bets for DeVonta Smith. And then I like this one. The longest reception for Saquon Barkley is at 9.5 yards at -106. I'm going to take that. I think Saquon's going to have at least 1 big catch in this game. Maybe it's not the wheel route. We've been begging to bring it back. We haven't seen it since week 1, although he was open on the wheel route. Never mind. I take that back. Against the Giants last week, Jalen just missed it. But even Saquon had a check down that he took for 10, 11 yards against the Giants. So whether it's a screen pass, a wheel route, get him in pre-snap motion, lined up against a linebacker, put him in the slot. Maybe it's a check down that Saquon just takes long. Over 9.5, I like that. I'll take that bet. Not the longest run for Barkley. That's going to be like 30 plus. It feels like every single week. You can count on that. His longest reception, I'll say, is over 9.5 yards. So that's LOE 3 presented by FanDuel. We'll post all of our bets before the game Sunday on our Twitter account at Locked On Birds. We'll have Gino's 3 picks as well. We'll wrap up the show coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Well, as you just heard, Locked On Eagles is sponsored by America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets, like the over on DeVonta Smith's 4.5 receptions. Take him with that anytime touchdown at +210. All you got to do is bet $5, whether it's on the bets that I'm taking or go off on your own beaten path. If you bet $5, you're going to get started with $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. Again, all you got to do is place one first $5 bet at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Louie DiBiase wrapping up this week of shows, getting you ready for Eagles-Bengals. Bengals are 2.5-point favorites on FanDuel, -2.5. The Eagles +2.5 underdogs here. 47.5 is the over-under. I'm going to take the Eagles to cover. I'm going to take the over on those points at 47.5. I think there will be points scored. Again, these are two of the most talented offenses in football. It's the top two wide receiver duos in the league, in my opinion, right now. Although when healthy, the Dolphins have a case with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But I think if I was picking two receiver duos based on just complete skill sets, it's easily the Eagles and the Bengals. I'm definitely taking Brown and Smith and Chase and Higgins over Hill and Waddle, or pretty much any of the duos. Houston's, Seattle's, the list goes on. I would definitely take these two. But since he's crazy, unlike the Eagles, they don't seem to prioritize that duo as much, or maybe they just can't afford it. I don't know. I know the Bengals they don't have as deep pockets as the Eagles do with their ownership group, but if they let T. Higgins go next year, that's nuts. I mean, and that's why this game is like huge for the Bengals too. They can't afford to go down to 3-5, especially the way the AFC North, Baltimore and Pittsburgh are running away and stacking up wins. They need to win now, and this is kind of like their moment. Like this year might be their last hurrah. If they lose T. Higgins, like their window will never be closed with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on that football team and Trey Hendrickson. But you lost Tyler Boyd last year. Joe Mixon's gone. If T. Higgins is gone after this year, like things can change quick in the NFL. And I think these two teams represent that maybe more than any, right? Again, I don't think either one of these teams are going away anytime soon. They just have too much talent and firepower. And I think they both have really good quarterbacks. So even if Jalen Hurts is an elite, when you have Jalen, like you're always going to have a certain floor of winning, even in 2021. Like you're still a playoff team that year when he wasn't a complete quarterback. So they're always going to be good. But these two teams kind of represent when something's hot, you got to strike. I can't remember the saying, but basically when your window is open, when your Super Bowl opportunity is there, you got to take advantage because you never know if you're going to be back. And, we've said after playoff losses or even after Super Bowl 57, we said it after the 2017 Super Bowl win that, hey, this team is built to be back. Like this isn't the only time, like they're going to be contending for years to come. And while that's true, the Eagles have they've made the playoffs in 6 of 7 years. The Bengals made an AFC championship right after their Super Bowl loss to LA in 2021. At the same time, neither team has been back since they nearly beat Mahomes and Matt Stafford and got a ring. And sometimes you don't get back. So hopefully that's not the case for the Eagles especially. But I think both these teams have shown that it's really hard to get there. It's really hard to do it again. So when you have that opportunity, like go get that ring. And that's why it's got to pain both of these teams that they didn't get those rings in 2021 and 2022. It makes you appreciate 2017 even more because you did capitalize on that run and you saw how quickly things can change right after. And I think the Bengals and Eagles are seeing now, it's not as dramatic as the Eagles, fall off after 2017, right? Like both these teams are really good still, but it's really hard to do it again and things change and it's hard to keep everybody around, to keep that core in place. Quarterbacks can regress. Coaches can regress. You can lose players to free agency. People age fast. Like that's just the reality of the NFL. So both these teams are trying to make sure that that's not the case and this window is still open and that they make sure down the road they're not saying, damn, that really was our one moment, 2021, 2022, and we should have took advantage. So I hope that's not the case, but both these teams do show that it's difficult to get back in the NFL, and that's why you got to appreciate the wins when you can get them and appreciate the runs when you can get them. But I do think both these teams are very good and not going anywhere, and this is a big game for both as they try to show that they are still those teams, and they try to get back into not just the playoff contending, because the Eagles are in that, and so is Cincinnati, since he's only a game back from the wild card round, but both are trying to get back into that Super Bowl conversation. And so that's kind of I don't want to say what's on the line this week because it could still change, plenty of games left, but this is a big litmus test matchup for both, for sure. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Locked On Eagles. I'm Louie DiBiase. We'll see you after the game on Sunday for the post-game show. Make sure you subscribe on all platforms, YouTube, and wherever you listen. We appreciate you making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.